Meeting in advance.
Good morning. This is the Ways and Means Committee. It's Friday, Thursday, March 26th at 9:15. We are beginning our work. If you want to go in the hallway for your conversation, that would be super awesome. Thank you. So we're like still in the midst of crossover. My head is certainly in 12 different places. I don't know where all of your heads are. We have so many bills on the floor this afternoon. And I wanted us to like do a hard reset on what we've done so far on education transformation and what is still before us to do. I wanted to create a document before we did this, but I did not have time to do that. And so we're going to do this all together, messy in real time. So fun. So fun, messy, real time. Okay. So this might be a good time for the whiteboard, but you're eating your breakfast, so I'm going to do.
I'm excited about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're excited about the whiteboard? Okay,
Uh-huh.
I'll talk slowly so you can eat slowly. You don't
Okay,
need to
sounds
rush
good.
your.
Oh, no, this is good.
Okay. So. This is a list in no order whatsoever, and then let's go through the list. Does that sound good? And then let's all add things to the list.
Okay.
Okay. So there's special education. Act 73, updated funding for special education to account for how spending in current law is split between district general fund dollars and district special education dollars. And so we heard testimony, feels like 12 years ago, but I think it was just a month ago in a joint hearing with House Ed of the need to focus on maintenance of effort, regardless of how the new funding formula works. Because we have in our JFO's contract around the weights, there's special work being done on special education funding. So the Council of Special Education, what is it called? What is their association called? Anyone got it?
Vermont Council of Special. Yeah, something like that.
Okay, great. You don't know either.
It's called the Special Education Association.
Yes, that's
VCSEA.
Okay.
VCSEA.
Those people shared very specific language that they are recommending we include in next steps in Act 73 to make sure that maintenance of effort, which is a federal requirement, continues to be a focus. And we have that language and we can pull it up later. Yeah.
If it's a requirement, do we need to put it in because it's a requirement of federal law?
No, but yes.
Okay.
So let's talk for each of them once we put the whole list up there and then see if there's anything else we want to add. Okay, tax classification.
Go on.
Yeah.
I think we have to have Medicaid in that group as well, because Medicaid funds a lot of items.
Let's do the whole list and then we'll add things to it.
All right.
Okay. Because I'm scared we won't get through the list if we do
Okay.
everything as we go.
Tax classification.
Okay, tax classification. Act 73 set in motion the division of non-homestead properties into two categories. I'm just going to say all of it so that we're all like remembering things.
Yeah.
This was very helpful to me. Okay, and I will share it with everyone once the typing is done. Act 73 set in motion the division of our non-homestead properties into two categories for the purposes of taxing second homes at a higher rate. The comprehensive report from the Department of Taxes, which I want to continue to thank the Department of Taxes for because it was such a lovely report, recommends next steps for legislative decisions, form development by tax, and how rates could be set in the future to cover the cost of lowering all homestead rates to the lowest rate in the state. We have been moving forward with next steps regarding definitions so the tax department can move forward with their form development. We can't set the rates yet because we don't understand what properties would fall into the new classification, and we don't have the processes and data that we need to do that. We are finalizing language. We've spent lots of time finalizing that language. I think it's almost ready to tie up in a bow, but we need to look at it one last time.
So let me just have, so we need data still, and we've talked about the processes, and then we'll have, then the forms will have to be created by the Department of Taxes.
Yes.
All right.
Another piece is reappraisals and regional assessment districts. We have a statewide education tax, it's functionally a statewide grand list. However, our properties are valued very inconsistently across the state. We've taken so much testimony on this. We've been working on it for as long as we've been working on the non-homestead stuff. It's been multiple biennia, the plural,
Biennium.
Is that how, is biennium the plural? Or
Multiple
biennium?
years.
Anyway,
Oh, no, that's,
I've definitely lost English at this point. in this
we'll look it up.
Great. It will create savings and efficiency and equity in our system, and we are finalizing the language on that. And we looked at that before crossover.
Yep.
School construction, school debt. Our school construction program ended in 2007.
Yep.
And we know that it's been incredibly inconsistent across the state since. In order to realize the goals of Act 73, I think everyone agrees that likely some new regional high schools will need to be built. I think everyone agrees that some elementary schools will need to have some additions, some high schools will need some additions, lots of things are needed. Act 73 had recommendations in it for guidance. Those are with the Agency of Education, School Construction Division. There's a School Construction Advisory Board. Bunch of thoughts and a lot of different puzzle pieces, and we need to somehow bring those together. Trying to get a list of witnesses for that, for us to work on that next week. Reserve guidance. Is this working for you, Charlie?
Yep.
Okay.
Keep it up.
Language very slow.
Yeah, in the last few years, right, difficult education spending, it became very clear to us how some districts are spending differently, some districts are saving differently. If districts are going to merge, there needs to be equity before or after the merger. And at the request of some business officials last year, we asked the Agency of Education to set clear reserve standards and guidance. Was that last year too? Anyway, whenever we did it. And so we're taking the next step of clarifying that language. We have that language too.
Yeah.
Pre-K. Current law weights for pre-K are arbitrary. We've kicked the can on them since Act 27. Human Services is working on an update to pre-K language to achieve parity in payment and requirements. That language is going to leave the Human Services Committee hypothetically tomorrow. Bless you. It's going to be sent as a memo to the House Education Committee. The House Education Committee is going to incorporate it is going to work on it and incorporate it into the bigger Act 73 next steps bill they're working on, and then it will get sent to us.
Yep.
We are going to need to figure out how to shift from what I understand thus far of what they've done, and we're going to need to take more testimony. We're going to need to work on a shift from pupil weights to a categorical grant and what that will look like. So we'll see what happens there. But that's how that information is flowing.
And it's open, whether it's categorical grades.
I think that's the direction that that committee is going in, but we will see when it gets here.
But we have the choice about that.
We get to work on the financing.
And we have the choice whether it's categorical grant.
Yes, we get to work on the financing part of it. Transportation equity. You can just say transportation, you have to put in there.
Yeah.
Is a key piece of any changes to governance, finance, or education delivery. We heard yesterday that different districts are doing this very differently from each other. The cost of it is very different from district to district. A refundable grant at 50% would not work with the foundation formula. We're going to need to do lots of things. I think the most effective next step for that would be we form a small informal working group with folks from transportation, folks from here, and folks from ed to just even figure out what the next steps on that would be. Yes,
I don't even think we have the information. to do
Yes.
this. Okay,
and so that would be,
Transportation, you mean?
Yeah.
yeah. And so I think the working group would just say like, what information do we need to do next steps? Okay,
and just to be clear, I also think how you answer any of these is gonna depend on what House Ed sends.
yes. 100%. So
House Ed sends to us. I mean, this is,
I should have started with that, but it was further down on my arbitrary list that I've not managed yet. So the next thing I have is CISA support and merger incentives. So House Education is likely, but they're planning on voting on a bill around Wednesday. Gonna send us a bill that moves towards strengthening the CISA system. And then having the CISOs facilitate mergers from there. So when we receive that, and that's going to be the bill that we receive, that we're going to put all these other pieces in. So when we receive that language, we're going to need to be working on what kind of incentives and disincentives would go in place, tax policy wise, to support the work and the funding of the CISAs and those mergers. I don't know if that's sort of an Act 46 style tax thing, another style tax thing. We all need to be thinking about that. Yes.
is this something that JFO could help model? I mean, part of the problem is the districts that didn't merge, the small districts are overwhelmingly tuition towns, and they're already buying education retail. So merging them doesn't save money because they'll still be buying retail. So as we think about costs, squeeze versus juice, is there a way to model that? Because we could be doing a hell of a lot of squeeze for no juice.
I do not know, but we will find out. And then two more. If House Education is sending us a bill with CISAs and incentivized mergers, then we will need to add different contingencies to the foundation formula. And we will need to add clarifications to the foundation formula. Bridget's been working on some language for that. We will look at that tomorrow, next week, something like that.
What about the current formula with that under there?
The current law formula, yeah, that I think changes to that can be part of merger. I would put them in the category of update changes to merger incentives personally.
Oh, update changes to merger.
And then the last thing on the list,
Yeah.
I should have told you how many things before we started
It's
writing.
good. I'm thinking about what I could.
You can rip off that timeline from below.
No, I love that timeline where this is
So
so
would you-
Below.
Just so,
Wait, I can-
so just so I'm clear on something, Chair, Advisor, there's CISA support, which is strengthening CISA, who will facilitate mergers. That could, and since we are Finance Committee, we would be looking at financial things that would do it. But the merger incentives, we could get started on sooner. You're saying with 60-68, but that's 60-68, the current finance, what do you want to call it?
27.
Our
24.
current financing formula.
That's what I
We
would
would
call it,
want to make changes to that as we get,
as part of a transition incentive that's
All right.
thing.
our,
And I would think of that more in the context, like, I think Act 46 might be a good place to start, but I'm not sure.
It's just such a different,
Yes.
there's no comparison between 73 and 46. So I think assuming 73 will work the way 46 did, I think it's very naive.
Thank you for calling me naive. Okay.
Yeah.
The last thing is updated appropriations.
Same one.
In the budget that is on the floor today, we're gonna have such a great afternoon, everyone. So many great things happening this afternoon, so many big bills. We have transportation, we have a budget, we have the miscellaneous tax, we have a yield bill. It's gonna be like Ways and Means party down there.
That way.
Brian. So in the budget, there is updated appropriations to the Agency of Education. There was this huge amount, 3 point something million that went to the Agency of Education last year for contracting. Updating that language to better align with the work that House Education is doing.
So your question, do we know if they spent that?
They did not. And so it's shifting the appropriation of the remaining money.
Can I just ask a question?
And we can look at that language.
Can I ask you a question about the sentence you just said? So
About what-
in line with
I
what
didn't hear.
House Ed is working on, as in what they're working on
With
in terms of.
CSAs and mergers.
Okay, I just need it all spelled out, so I'm not assuming anything.
So to summarize, we're gonna get a bill about CSAs and mergers, voluntary mergers, supported mergers. Sure, they'll have great ways to describe it. At like 10-ish, 10:30-ish, Aaron Brady is gonna come up and give us an update on what they're doing. These are all of the outstanding pieces that we set in place in Act 73 and assigned to ourselves for next steps for this year. What have we left off this list?
Foundation formula analysis for the consultant through JFO.
Yes, foundation formula updates. Did you not write that down?
I've put conditions to foundation formula, but it's
Oh,
not
okay.
really the same thing.
Okay, let's just call it foundation formula updates. Rebecca.
I'm sorry to be beating a dead horse here, but there are errors in the current funding formula that are distorting incentives currently, and I think it would be helpful to understand that so that we can understand how the incentives in the current formula are contradicting some of the things that we're saying.
So
Talking about section 127 weights, act 127 weights.
So in the education, the CISA support and merger incentives.
Right.
I think Representative Odie asked about that as well. And so changes to the current law formula would go under CISA support mergers and incentives. Because we're looking at how we're supporting incentives for the policy direction we want to be going in.
This might be too much detail, but I'm confused and I don't know about the first year of preschool, the 3-year-olds.
Mhm.
I'm unclear as if that is or is going to be only for children who need special help. And if that will all be reimbursed by the federal government for the special ed costs that we incur.
At some point, the House Human Services Committee was looking at moving from 3 and 4-year-olds to just 4-year-olds. But I think right now, the bill they have in front of us is both 3 and 4. They have the bill in front of them as both 3 and 4-year-olds, but we'll see when it gets here.
Okay.
I don't- yeah.
All right.
What was brought up with special ed is Medicaid.
Mhm.
Now, my thing, what I want to do about Medicaid reimbursement, you already know about, I've brought it up in the full committee. No money falling to the bottom line. But you said Medicaid, so what did you mean?
Well, my point is Medicaid supports both IEP related services, so it's germane to the special education conversation, but in theory, it also supports non-IEP health related services. So section 504 plans, things like that. Which is under the ADA as opposed to IDEA.
Can we clarify all that when that bill comes over from Human Services?
Yeah, we'll do that, but that I think is what Representative Holcomb said is different than what. So let's name other revenue sources and the future of those other revenue sources. How does that sound?
Where are we putting that?
Is that,
Are we also then gonna, if we're talking about all revenue sources, are we also gonna put Act 76 up here?
what's Act 76?
The pre-K subsidies, the CFAP program?
That will be part of our work on pre-K.
Okay, okay.
So other revenue sources into the education fund.
That's a whole separate category, no?
Indeed. That's why it got a dash and not a star.
Well, that just is time.
And revenue sources that are leaving the education fund to go over to the transportation fund over time, if that's what we're doing. So should we put that down?
I think that could be contained there.
Sources to and from the ed fund, how about that?
So once we figure, I'm not being the world's best communicator today, team, I'm sorry. So after we see what else we need on the list, I want to go through each section and like clarify the status and what we need to do for next steps on each one. So is there anything else that needs like a primary category? Representative Vogel?
So this is not a weight issue, but we have regions of the state where school districts depend on schools that make parents pay $4,000 to $36,000 additional dollars to enroll. And that shields the district from tax exposure in a way that distorts who's impacted by the excess spending penalty. And unless we address that, I actually think this formula is not going to work.
Which one, which formula?
Any formula.
Okay.
Somewhere.
I think that would, I mean, we have foundation formula updates, we have current law.
I think it's in
Wait,
excessive
updates.
support and merger incentives.
I think it's
Yes.
everything because it's
Great.
distorting
Okay.
everything.
Okay, are there any new categories anyone wants to add? Jim, Representative Burkhart? Okay, you feel like we've covered all the categories? Yes, okay. Okay,
But just to flesh out new school construction, school debt. There's so many.
what existing
others.
debt?
Existing, yeah. Existing school debt,
Systems.
and then looking at bonding and revenue sources for it.
Okay. Do we have our list? Yes?
It's done by when?
Well,
Like next Friday, but we have done a huge amount of work on many of these, and I think maybe like, that's part of why I want, they've been like separate. I would like a new term for orphan language. I feel bad for, like, do we even use the term orphan to refer to humans anymore? Like, why would we call it language orphan? Is there like some technical lawyerly term for it?
I've been told not to use it.
I know, so like,
You're
Tie up,
pressured by
just
committee
tie
in
up.
using it because you guys expect us to call it that.
what?
I call it language.
Just language?
I have some language for you.
I need a modifier. Can you?
unattached,
Language that ties up. Language that ties up. Anyway, whatever. All right.
Okay, anyway, we have it all as separate language, not together
Wayward.
language.
I'd say wayward language, wayward words.
That really tickled me. So we have all this separate language, we haven't put it all together, and so I think it's easy to sort of forget about the pieces, and so I'm hoping we can start putting it together just so that we can find it all in one place. So let's start by, does anyone have one they want to start with?
I think school construction would be a good place to start.
Charlie,
What?
are you serious?
No,
Okay.
I think that's another way to think that we have gotten the most, but that we feel like we have
Okay.
the most under our belts.
Thank you.
And.
I love that. Okay.
And check the box.
Yes, tax classifications. We looked at it 8 bajillion times. I feel like it's almost tied up with a bow and we probably just need one more look at it. Is that where everyone else feels we are on it?
And some bows will be nice and red and shiny and some will be black.
If you don't like it.
Yeah.
Drama, I love it.
Well,
Yes.
I'm just saying, not everybody likes it, but
Yeah.
we're
Yes.
going along with the minority.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go along even though I'm in the majority.
I
Yeah.
know, and I appreciate
Yeah, I
that.
appreciate that about you, Karen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Okay, so that,
So something.
tax classification, do you want to look
let's
at
just,
it?
like,
Yeah.
let's just put it, do we want to, let's look? Okay,
Yeah, we could do it. Maybe we could look at it like not when we're fresh in the morning, but at the very end of the day, because we've done it already.
okay.
The hardest problems we should put in the morning when we're fresh.
But that one,
I feel like I was fresh 3 hours ago and I'm not anymore.
Me too. 4 hours ago, but let's do that one now. So
Okay,
we can get a
Let's
structure
do
in
it.
our mind
Okay.
of what this process will
great.
be.
Tax classifications.
It's ribbons out.
I don't remember who did it. Kirby. You could come, just take us through the language one, yeah.
reads you want. I'm hoping it's all right. I'm gonna take art though.
I'll pull it up.
If so, you don't have to send it. I'll.
Okay. It probably.
Can I add one more thing to the list?
Yeah.
We need to talk about timelines.
You mean for all this?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I would use another color, but our markers.
That's the thing we should talk.
Portia, we need new markers.
Yeah, then we should do it first.
Well, we have to know what we're doing. I mean, time is different if you're doing CSIS and if you're doing late. We'll just take 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Just, we can't do that.
Of when things come into effect.
Yes.
Right, so she's saying, you need a timeline.
You said it. She said it, and then it got written down.
Okay.
And I imagine the bill is gonna come from House Ed with a timeline in it, and then we can work with that timeline.
That would be.
But if someone could remember to ask Erin about that when she arrives, that would be cool.
It's still a week before we get that bill though.
Yeah,
Say that?
isn't that great?
We have other things.
Because we have so much to do to prepare for it. Once we get it, we're not gonna be able to keep it for a very long time,
Okay,
because that's how Ways and Means.
all right. So we get a
Yes.
concept now.
I think we did a similar thing last year where we worked on all this stuff and then we only had the actual bill for like a couple days.
I remember, yeah. Kirby, you're so good to deal with us from where we're worse.
Okay, this is our best.
This isn't bad. Fine.
We're all in agreement on something.
I always appreciate this committee. Very organized.
So many people out this morning.
Yes.
On our computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, posted.
So yes, draft 3.2 is what we're looking at. Sorcha has it posted on the committee website. The idea, as I understand it, is you're all talking about things that could be included in the ed bill, right? So we're just looking at wayward classifications language that will make its way to the ed bill. It sounds like is the plan.
And I'm gonna ask you and John so what would happen if you put all the things in just all the different language into one big document, even though you know you would have to put it all into another document after that?
If you're asking about the practical aspect, if we put all that together, that means any changes that we make, we'll have to coordinate. So it just makes it a little less flexible. Okay. So Kirby Keaton Legislative Council, quick walkthrough of the language that we have so far for classifications. The way this will work is section 1, we have a change to the grand list under this language. The listers and assessors will start to include on the grand list the number of dwellings using the definition that we've talked about before and that we'll cover below for a parcel. Last time I was here, there was a little bit of talk at the end with involving Jake about how exactly things will work out. So I will touch on that because it seemed to be a little bit of an open question last time and it relates to what we're looking at. Jake had mentioned that he was under the impression that the grand list would cover number of dwellings and also the something to do with the use of the parcel. That's not what we have in the language right now. The way that this language will operate, just 10,000 foot view, is listers and assessors will identify a number of dwellings. The dwelling use attestation would be where the owner lists the use. And
Much more appropriate division of responsibilities and more in alignment with how current practice works and would be more comfortable for everyone.
And so then there would be a lot of concern from assessing officials if they were given that responsibility. So,
Touched Mark's desk when you said that.
Huh?
Touched Mark's
yes,
desk.
I did. The spirit,
The spirit of assessing.
so, yeah, so I do want to make sure that that's all clear so that we're all, on the same page. I don't recall from Taxes Act 73 report that they were asking for assessing officials to do that work. It was something through this committee process that it's been landed on that's going to be a dwelling use attestation responsibility. So make that entirely clear. Section 2 is a new section of law being added on property tax classifications. It establishes the new system. It defines the classifications as homestead, non-homestead, non-residential, and non-homestead residential. The term dwelling is used and defined here to identify what is non-homestead residential or what is non-homestead non-residential. Dwelling somewhat relevant to homestead, but we're using current law for that, and it's already well established. Something's not a dwelling if it's not fit for year-round habitation. So in that way, seasonal camps, for instance, would be considered non-homestead, non-residential under the classification system. Homestead has the same meaning as current law. If something's a long-term rental, that means it's going to be non-homestead, non-residential. And we have a definition for long-term rental here that involves the being rented out for at least a period of 30 days and for a total of 6 months in a calendar year with a bona fide landlord-tenant relationship. Also part of long-term rental would be employer housing, both regular employer housing and also for farm workers. Or farm employees is the term we're using here. We have the definition for non-homestead, non-residential, which is the way this definition operates is basically the other bucket. Like if you don't fall into homestead and you don't fall into non-homestead residential, then you end up as non-homestead, non-residential. We have the definition for non-homestead residential. It's a dwelling, or it's a parcel with a dwelling. So automatically, if there's not a dwelling that doesn't meet that definition, it's not going to end up in this category. With a dwelling that is not a homestead, rented out as a long-term rental. You've decided to also take mobile homes and make sure that they're never considered non-homestead residential. So we have that. And also parcels that are used exclusively by the owner of a homestead on the same parcel. So this is the case where there's an extra unit on the parcel, but it's effectively being used as part of a homestead. So you've made it clear that we're going to make sure that that's never considered a second home for purposes of classification.
Kirby, can you give me an example of what would then be non-homestead residential? Not rented out, what would be?
Yeah, so one reason why there's a lot of nuances and details in here is because property is used in lots of different ways. And we're trying to at least hit on the biggest uses out there so that there's not ambiguity with the system. That's why there's a lot of ins and outs. But the standard property that's going to fall into non-homestead residential would be, say, a single family home that is not used as a homestead, that it's just sitting there unused a lot. That would fall into this. That would be considered a second home,
Yes.
Okay.
Also a unit that is being rented out for short-term rentals or being unused often, like to say like company owns a condo and they're just renting it out occasionally. But they're not renting it out for any kind of long-term usage, or at least it's not long-term enough to hit that 6-month mark in the year for it to be considered long-term.
Okay.
You could have scenarios where a property is being renovated and temporarily it falls into this category because it's going unused while it's being renovated. That could happen, just so you're aware. I think that would be as far as what I can think of, if there's any unintended type of usage that gets caught up in the higher rate, it would be probably that when a renovation's happening.
But just to make sure I'm just checking my own understanding, but because we're choosing finished, it actually would likely benefit. It would be like lose revenue because it is finished from that counting it.
That's for the finished, which we'll get to, really comes into play when there's a mixed use. If it's just a single family home that's being renovated, it's unless the work being done is so extensive that it's not even livable for the season, then it would probably end up not be considered a dwelling anymore.
Mhm.
So in that way, yeah, it wouldn't get caught up in this
And in the
classification.
context of the non-homestead residential, you're still being surgical when you use the word finished. Like, I'm just trying to say it's minimizing the hit on a property tax payer.
Yeah, let me get to the finished part. Well, we're almost there, right? So mixed use, how this language handles mixed use. This will come into play specifically when there's a parcel. On that parcel is a dwelling that is being used as non-homestead residential, as in a second home or a short-term rental, something like that. And there's also a part of the parcel that's being used for some other purpose that's not a dwelling, like a business. Or I suppose it could come into play if part of it's being used as a hotel. If there's a hotel and also short-term rental situation on the same property, something like that. You start to get into like our laws about registering lodgings and stuff like that. So, you know, it will become complicated quickly. But the point is, when you've got a mixed use, right? How do you handle it? A parcel with 2 or more portions qualifying as different classifications shall be classified proportionally as follows. Buildings shall be classified proportionally based on the percentage of finished floor space used. That's the newest addition. That's what Representative Holcomb was just talking about. Finished is not defined in the language right now, which means that you're leaving to the Department of Taxes to possibly put out some guidance on how to make calls for what's finished. Again, a lot of this stuff is going to come down to the dwelling use attestation. It's going to be the owner making a judgment call about what is finished. And then it would be up to the department to decide, you know, how much do they want to spend their resources in going out and trying to verify whether that's truthful. But this is intended to cover situations such as there's a large unfinished barn, there's a second home. Because the barn is more floor space than the home, a person could try to say, oh, I've got all of this non-homestead, non-residential, AKA lower rate property here. So I shouldn't have to really pay very much at the higher rate because in comparison to that barn, I don't have a whole lot of second home usage going on. That's when the department could come in and decide whether that barn is actually considered finished property, whether it is actually legitimately should be considered non-homestead, non-residential in the first place. And it could affect the tax rate applied to the overall parcel.
Representative Lee.
My advice is that, because I can imagine you have a second home and then you build a barn with a lot square footage in it that you never use as a barn, but that just gives you the rate that you better tax treatment. So would it also not just finish, but also have whether it's actually used? I can imagine,
Mhm.
imagine a barn is this tall. And it takes a lot of floor space and I love.
It's just for chickens.
Yeah, it'd be for,
I love that.
if you just wanted. And then you're gonna get around the wall that way.
Well, that's why finished was decided to be included here to.
I was suggesting could it also be used, it could be finished, it'd be beautiful, finished, 5,000 square foot barn that is just tiny. And that's not really used, it's just a big barn.
Yeah,
What?
what a waste of money.
Guys, I want us to, I was really hoping we were just doing a quick check-in to remind ourselves about this bill.
Occurred to me.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. And I want to make sure that we can sort of touch on each thing on this list as a level set.
Generally, what I would say is that there's probably going to be some really unique situations that come up as this gets implemented. I mean, something that's trying to affect, you're trying to tailor something to every type of property usage that exists. So it's safe to say that in years to come, if you put this into law, you will hear from the tax department that encountering unique situations and there will be a needs for
Not
adjustments.
just whether it's finished, but whether it's used for what it's finished for.
And it may be that the situation comes up so often that you would want to actually do some real, but until you know more,
And these are on
Right.
Charlie's desk if anyone, or between mine and Charlie's desk, if anyone wants to look at them in the interim. I borrowed them back from Jake,
Okay.
who we had given them as a gift. Which I'm sure he just appreciated so much.
Kirby, on that one place about being a long-term lease agreement, we just in 933 gave the tax commissioner the ability to ensure that it was a bona fide transaction for the purpose of property transfer tax.
Mhm.
I think we may also want to give the commissioner the authority to determine if that long-term lease is a bona fide lease. Unless it's somewhere else in there.
that's why we put as one of the requirements. That's why we have this third requirement. It does do that.
Thank you, yes.
It's not expressly saying the commissioner, but all of this stuff is going to be
Got it.
enforced by the commissioner.
Okay, yep, good point.
Let's not.
But what about renewable energy sources? What do we do about that? Like if somebody puts up a structure that will hold panels and it's a solar farm.
Representative, I'm gonna ask you to follow up on that after committee, work through the whole thing, and then come back to us if you do think the change is needed.
Okay. That's a good idea.
Because if we left a scenario out of flip cards, great, and if we didn't, great.
Fine.
Okay, thank you. I don't mean that to put you off, I mean it to like.
I am thinking
Okay,
about
great.
it and I'm thinking,
Okay.
yeah, all right. I'm not feeling put off in the
Good.
slightest.
Back to you, Kirby.
Sure. If there's a fixture on a property that doesn't have floor space to it,
Right.
mixed use is not. Kirby, keep going. Okay, so notwithstanding any provision of this subsection of the contrary, so as I said before, we have a provision here where homesteads is handled like homesteads like now, including business use of a homestead is handled like it is now under current law, trying not to upset that system. And there's also a provision addressing the time issue, which exists under current law when it comes to deciding the business use of a homestead. The law looks at square footage currently, but when the same square footage is being used for more than one purpose, we don't have an answer for that. We haven't had an answer for that. So there is a provision here about the primary use of the floor space being what is determined when you're trying to decide the square footage usage. There's forms, of course, for the commissioner to issue for this. There's use value appraisal saying that nothing in the classifications area of law should be taken to alter how current use is done. And I'm not aware of any obvious conflict that would come up either. The appeals will be handled in the same matter for property valuation appeals. This has been worded knowing that in RADs, you've changed how appeals work. So I tried to word this in a way in which it's not affected by those changes in the other area of law. We have the dwelling use attestation, which presumably will be done similarly to the homestead the homestead declaration, along with the homestead declaration, where owners will report their usage for purposes of classification. There's provisions here about when there's errors, what will happen. When there's errors that are so bad that it looks like fraud, the commissioner can look into it. And then there's associated penalties with these things. The penalties tend to be oriented toward if there was an error and the error benefits the taxpayer, there's going to be penalties. When there's errors that don't benefit the taxpayer, it gets corrected, but there's no penalty.
Kirby, does this involve another piece of paper the owner has to fill out, or are they already attesting to the use of their property?
There will be for some property owners, there will be new paperwork. It will be the dwelling use attestation. The way it's kind of envisioned now, we don't actually have one of those in existence to show you at this point, but the way it's envisioned is you put down the number of dwelling units, you put down how they're used. In other words, is it long-term rental or not?
Wait, I think of it as right now, we only ask homestead payers to fill out a form, and now we're gonna ask folks other than homestead payers. Homestead.
That is one way to put it.
Yeah.
Every property owner will be filling out something like a homestead, either a homestead or the other thing. So property tax classifications, transition. So we have the transition language. This is from Act 73. This is about the year in which transitioning to this new system, the tax department is going to have to collect information for the first year to get it going. This language would repeal all of the redundant parts of Act 73. It's not meant to make any substantive change. It's just, we have language in here replacing each of these things. So we're repealing the old. You do have the contingency language for tax rate multipliers that it's the intent that this entire system will be looked at again when you go to set tax rate multipliers. That was from Act 73, where the multipliers were not set. This language also does not set the multipliers. It does everything to set up the system, but does not actually change the tax rate at this point. That will be presumably a discussion for next session. We have the prospective repeal language from Act 73 that if you don't create new tax rate multipliers by July 1, 2028, then there's a repeal of this. And then we have all of our effective dates. And those effective dates involve the same contingencies as Act 73 had, including the bulk of this is only effective provided that the new school districts contemplated by Act 73 have assumed responsibility for the education of all resident students, and that the expert tasked with developing the cost factor formula, foundation formula, has provided a report.
And we're gonna need to change all the contingencies and timelines to line up with the bill that's coming to us.
Okay, so that still needs to be done.
Mhm.
So this is not ready to go.
So that's from my perspective, that's the one thing that needs doing unless Representative Odie discovers something. Okay. Great. And we have contingencies and timelines already written down on our list, so we know we still need to do that. Check. I would rather not go through the regional assessment district language again. I'm gonna ask people to do that. We'll put it all together, but if folks can do that sometime today, here on time, that would be great. Thank you.
Red.
Red. let's look at the special education maintenance of effort language that was requested by that association that shall not be named.
CSEA,
See.
BC. BCC.
I think it's posted on our committee page under Beth's name.
It's under committee.
It's under committee. Beth drafted it. Beth is not very available these days because she's busy downstairs, and so we're gonna do what we need to do without her. And maybe someone can send her notes if we have notes for her.
So what do you want to do, Madam Chair? Just
Let's just all look at it with our eyes.
and not
How's
pull it
that
up?
feel? Do folks want it on the screen?
Yes, helpful.
Special ed funding, you mean,
Yeah.
4 pages.
We're just putting it up.
Can I give it? I have such concerns about all of this, in part because when Act 173 was passed, the whole assumption was that there were a bunch of instructional shifts that would happen that would enable the finance. And then the agency treated it as just a finance bill, but it's actually a practice bill. And I think the same is true here. If there isn't changes, or if there aren't, like, remember, it's a horrible thing. If there are not changes at the state level, and there are not changes in how districts are supported and how they're delivering services, none of this is gonna work.
And so that is, I just want to be clear, you're saying that that's something that is needed in special education, not necessarily something that's a critique of this particular language. It's something you would want to do in addition to this language.
No, I'm saying this whole thing will fall apart if we don't implement it on the administration side. I mean, it just doesn't work. And that's what we're seeing with the 173 census block. We just totally lost control. And part of it is, and it's bad for kids and it's also hard on taxpayers. And I just think that we have to be so attentive to implementation, because if we pass tight funding constraints and then don't pay attention to implementation, we're actually just setting everybody, including ourselves, up for higher costs.
And so I think one of the things that we haven't decided yet is what the funding constraints will be or won't be. That's
Yeah. That's why I'm
part
saying,
of the contractor, what do you call it? Joint fiscal, the joint fiscal contractor. And that's something we're gonna need to work on more this year. And so this was the request of the council. Let's look at this and then figure out what else we would need to be doing from here.
and it may be in the BOCES. I mean, I'm pleased the agency has about 20 more positions than when I was there. But the reality is the state used to provide a lot more technical assistance than there is currently. And if they can't do that, then this is not going to work. We'll just be super clear. That's part of why we're in the situation we're in.
Let's look at this language together,
Yeah.
or would people rather do it some magical time where Beth can be here? Is it okay to just read it?
4 pages.
Okay, great. So the first part of it is language that does not yet have a landing spot. And then the second half is language that's in the budget.
Okay.
The goal here is not for us to change the language now, but to figure out, bless you, what we need to do for next steps in order to finish the language.
Madam Chair, section 2 is all about reorientation of the appropriations.
Mhm. Does anyone have any, well, let's stay at section 1, sorry. In terms of the first section, is there anything that, what?
Two, explain to me what I think two means.
Which thing are you looking up to?
Me too. I need that explained to me.
Section B.
I'm wondering about that.
No, section 1B2, if someone could explain what they think that.
Line 14, is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
The way I read it is that while general education is through a foundation formula, special education is not.
So
It's
current
through a categorical grant.
So is this consistent with the census block approach? Or is this signaling a shift? I just want to know what people mean by
So,
supplemental reimbursement. I just
so I think, so what I think of as next steps from what you're saying is that we need to have the Special Education Association back in to talk us through this language and make sure it's what they were looking for and explain their sort of intents and desires with regard to that.
I just don't understand if this is intended to preserve the current census block approach, or if we are talking about shifting that approach.
So I think that's a great question to ask the Special Education Association, who I hope when they come can tell us what they're called. Yes, Representative Brannigan,
Right now, there is some local cost for these children,
very much. So yes,
so this would take that away.
I do not know. This is what we are going to figure out with our next steps.
Okay, so this is their language.
This is their language.
That's what I need to understand. Okay.
here as in whose line?
The Special Education Association.
Oh, yeah.
Which I can't wait to receive an email with someone telling me what it's actually called. Colin, do you just know?
Vermont Council of Special Education Administrators.
Vermont Council of Special Education Administrators. Yes, Vermont Council of Special Education Administrators.
That's which we have as VCSEA on the board.
And it's all the words that I keep on losing. Yeah, okay,
I guess.
Yes.
In that, I don't know what reflects me, so I want to know that.
okay,
Listening, tell us what reflects me.
okay, great. So that is a next step that we will take.
That's a,
Is anyone else thinking that they're gonna need anything else with regards to next steps on that? If you could just anticipate your thinking into the future, that would be helpful, even though I know it's hard.
This is for the education committee, I think, so you can tell me that and I won't ask it. When they talk about least restrictive environment, that's something for the education to.
Indeed.
This, I think, it would help me to know what the education committee intends in terms of the CSATs before I even look at this language. Because how I feel about it in part reflects what the goal of the CSATs is, particularly with the extraordinary reimbursement and the students with very intense needs.
That's your,
much.
okay,
I think it's gonna talk about section 2.
yes, we're gonna get there in 1 minute. Anything else in section 1? Okay,
Only that it's not specific to either the school district or CISA. So it could apply to both the way it's written.
Lawsuit.
so I'm gonna add, how does this need to be adapted? That's what this is, language.
My assumption is that House Ed is going to define the LEA.
Anyone else?
Okay,
Okay, let's, yep,
I'm just, I have, I'm really having trouble with this. Whatever House Ed is doing, I'm just gonna say, because we don't know, but I think in terms of proportional effects, I think I'd like to, this is D. There's so many things. And then the other thing is, I don't even know how a school district can be sure they are providing FAPE when they are paying tuition at this point, because FAPE is free and appropriate public education. And if schools have different standards, I don't even know how you can ensure FAPE in a non-public setting at this point. So there's just so many issues.
Would you like us to do?
Until I know what House Ed is recommending, it's pretty hard to know.
This is all new wording. Where'd the wording come from?
Came from the Council of Special Education Administrators.
Well done.
Well
Well done.
So can't we ask them that when we have them test?
Yes, we are going to, yes.
They can answer all this, because I think that's a good question. I'm wondering about that too.
And the whole point of regional services, particularly for students with intensive needs, is that actually even the districts of 4,000 probably aren't big enough. And so the regional solutions, they might take over some responsibility for supporting development of IPs, but also creating substantially separate settings.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's see what they have to say.
Let us go to appropriations language, which is section 2. So Cheryl, will you scroll please for us? Thank you for letting us use your computer. Bless you.
Bless you.
I want to fully acknowledge that in addition to the fact that everything changes. There might be some in the room across the way.
Yeah.
In addition to the fact that everything changes when it gets to the Senate, like budget language changes. Monthly, and so I'm assuming that even though this is in the budget now. The budget will pass, it will go to the Senate, and then we will coordinate with the Senate about updating this language to line up with the education. Bill, and what we can also do, which is JFO and Legislative Council's favorite thing. Is we pass different budget language in the Act 73 follow-up bill, and then those have to be lined up later. That's
Oh,
especially confusing and delightful thing we can do, but works very well sometimes.
I bet they love it.
Yeah.
It's fair enough.
Yes,
I am really struggling in this section. I'm trying to understand the order of operations, because if you go down to line 17 on page 3, it talks all about transition grants to facilitate transition to new governance. But the agency shall be prohibited from awarding grants pursuant to this subsection until new school district boundaries have been enacted. How do you get to new school district boundaries without some kind of transition?
I think the idea was that some of the money goes to the CISAs that can provide technical assistance to support the matchmaking, studying, whatever, I don't know where it works, you know what I mean? So, and then grants are awarded for like the legal support, like back office business support from there, that goes directly there. But I don't.
But this doesn't quite make sense to me. This to be reflect a map. It reflects like we all have to decide in this room, or not in this room, in this body, new district map, and then grants can start flowing. My understanding is that going toward the seesaw direction is more of a matchmaking process, as you called it. So this still feels like archival language from when we were thinking that we were enacting a map and sort of forcing district mergers. So that's why I'm confused about why that.
I have the same concern. I read it the same way. And I would like to say if in the Senate, in the conference committee, things get changed, then and it becomes something mandatory, I'm not saying it would be, but if they adopt boundaries, then this has to maybe work both ways. So maybe we have language that says if new boundaries, then it's this, if it's not.
I think this is a good question for staff. So could this be new boundaries for CISAs? And I know that this was Beth's language that she drafted. So I think maybe these are questions for Beth.
Yeah,
Or do
but
you
I
wanna-
can try to,
Okay,
so John Drayhoff's legislative council, I was only not paying attention, but I think you're talking about the top of page 3.
No, it's closer to the bottom of page 3. The sentence we're kind of stuck on is, line 17, 18, and 19. So that talks about not awarding grants to support transition to new governance models until new school district boundaries have been enacted. So I think the chair was asking, could that also mean boundaries for seesaws that,
I think you need new district, but like, I think it to be tightly defined.
yeah, I,
That's, you know.
yeah, I have a real problem with that language.
For context, in Act 46, there were both planning grants and then there were transition grants.
And I think this is,
There's a lot of cost in transition.
I understand that. My understanding of the goal of this language was that it was making funds available for both of those scenarios and that the money would move slightly separately in both of those instances. But we can check in with the education committee about that.
That's what I understand to be in B, further down the page. Is that not correct?
That's what we're talking about.
But B modifies A1.
Restate what you said about.
B1 on page 3, halfway down. It talks about funds appropriated in subdivision A1, which is
Oh, I see what you're saying.
of this section to award transition facilitation grants to school districts and cooperative education service areas to support the work required to transition to new governance models.
Yeah, but then there's a sentence at the end that says that none of those grants are gonna be awarded until new school district boundaries have been enacted.
So you have to do planning and the map making on your own,
No money.
and then you get money after you've done all the work.
And so what I'm gonna say as a next step for this is that we need to make sure that it is wrong tab, my note taking, give me a second here.
Okay, sorry, got it.
That it is fully flexible to CISAs and the voluntary process.
So you'd have an either or idea, like. I'm just worried that with whatever's going on, that goes on in the conference committee.
Oh, I think we're talking way before the conference committee.
Yeah, but if we have it all set up for the season and technical assistance and flexibility for the CISAs involved in the voluntary process, and then something else is decided later. And says.
Okay.
And if there are no CISAs, then it would be awarded after boundaries are.
Yeah. So Beth wrote it, but do you know who proposed it?
It was like a very complicated process with Peter and JFO and, okay, it was a lot of fingers. And while the bill was, like, they've changed the bill a bunch of times.
Okay.
So
Has the
it needs to be-
administration been involved in that too? Okay.
So we need to,
Yeah.
yep, so, okay, clear on what the next steps are for us to figure out for that. That still needs updating to line up with where the
Right.
education committee has come to. Next thing,
We're just knocking these off.
sure, yeah. From my perspective, I think we should wait on pre-K until we actually see what they're doing.
I agree. I'm just so concerned. I mean, I just gonna say, I have so many concerns about this because
I don't know what this is.
the special ed language, I can let it go right now because it's just a draft. But the notion that the strategic plan that we received is gonna address what needs to be done, I think is hugely problematic, so I'd almost rather not reference it.
Okay. But the next step for that is to talk to the special education administrators and the education committee about that.
I think it needs to be, yeah, we gotta have them in.
Yeah, yeah,
And Rebecca, can you talk to the education committee about that language as well?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
They come in next week or?
I think so. We'll figure it out.
Maybe, let me talk to Ed first.
Yeah, well, I think we'll schedule the administrators in and you can talk to Ed.
And just, you have, you just mentioned the pre-K, what, do you know, any idea when that's coming?
Yes, we were discussing this before you arrived, sir.
Thank you.
And the pre-K language is expected to be voted out of human services tomorrow-ish.
Okay,
And then it's going to go to education as a memo of sorts to be, it'll be like full statutory language, but it won't be voted out, it won't be a committee bill. It'll be sent to the education committee so they can incorporate it into their bill, and then it will get sent to us, which might be like next Thursday-ish.
Thank you.
But would we wait until then to have these folks in?
For pre-K, I'm back on, so we've closed up special education. We know the next steps for that. Pre-K next steps.
That was, yeah.
I'd like to wait until human services finishes what they're doing and maybe even education finishes what they're doing on it to figure out what happens next on that. Does anyone have anything?
I mean,
Yeah.
what they come back with is status quo. Do we even bother doing anything?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Regardless of what they come back. For it, take a pass through it, take a look through it so that we are current in our reins here.
Do you mean do that before they're done?
When it's appropriate, given the schedule that you outlined of things going from here to there and eventually to us.
Okay.
That makes sense. I mean, I just want to make sure
I'm gonna ask folks to read what they vote out over the weekend, and then we'll talk to the education committee about how much time they plan to spend on it.
that'll work. Thank you.
If we could also have a fiscal note with the pre-K piece, I think one of my concerns is complexity is cost. And some of the costs are booked in the state, but some of them are booked in school districts. And to the extent that we aren't actually reducing complexity, but we're increasing categorical grants or requiring new positions, we should just be mindful that we're increasing education spending without necessarily changing what people receive.
I imagine there's gonna be fiscal notes for everything.
I think I'm asking a different question,
Okay,
which is that very often when we get a fiscal note, all we get reports on is what's the impact on the state budget. Many of the decisions we make drive higher spending on the education fund. And I'm thinking if our purpose here is to figure out how to constrain costs, we need to not just get a fiscal note on what it does to the state budget. We need to also be talking about implications for school districts. Like
even the education fund.
yeah, for example, if we mandate that everybody has a pre-K coordinator, even if they're providing all their pre-K in-house, that's an additional demand that it's going to require them to hire an additional staff person who's going to drive additional healthcare costs. Like we have to think about our decisions and how they impact school budgets.
Of course,
Okay.
I'd love to say, I love that.
yeah, great, good. Any other next steps? On pre-K for now. This is not like the final steps. This is just where our next steps are. Transportation, I'm gonna go back to that. It seems like the next steps from yesterday, and I left minutes before it ended, are we need to figure out what we need to know in order to figure out next steps. And it seemed to me that we had a lot of questions for the agency about like, how is this spent? Like, what is the disparateness of the spending and how is the extreme, like, how is the spending? We had a bunch of questions we didn't have answers to yet. And so what I was imagining the next step would be is an informal working group actually just like putting together a list of those questions.
And
Yes.
respectfully, could we also maybe get the advice of JFL on this? Because I think what I'm finding helpful is to run decisions, like any spending data, I'm running it against, personally trying to against operating structure and poverty rate. And what you do see when you actually go beyond just the budget numbers is some very interesting patterns that really speak to the system. And I think it would be helpful to do that as well. I mean, why do some districts not offer any transportation at all? We ought to know that. And there is a reason, and there are patterns. So when we just look at the budget numbers, I think we miss the story.
And so I think that's some of the questions that we're going to need to ask to make a decision on this next year, probably.
next year we can make this decision, but
I think we have a lot that we don't know yet, and probably we're gonna need to request we learn over the summer.
I think that's great.
And so for this informal working group of folks to figure out those next steps and those questions, Teddy, you said you wanted to do that.
Say again, what the working group,
It's gonna figure out what questions we want to include in statute for sort of next steps for a report from some combination of from the AOE. So, and did you talk to Woody?
I haven't got nobody yet, no,
Okay.
to Representative Tomlinson.
Okay.
But
Yes.
this is also going to be a new data collection for districts too. I mean, because I don't even think the AOE has some of the data we need. So for example, there are districts that reimburse parents $300 a month if they want to drive their kids to school.
Really?
I'm telling you, you do.
That's amazing.
No, it reflects.
Like, it's amazing to know that.
Yeah, no, and my point, and like the whole point about whether you amortize the buses or not, I mean, my point is that there are very strategic decisions being made that are being made for local reasons, and if we don't understand those, and the agency doesn't necessarily collect the data.
And so I think that's the kind of thing that we want to understand, and we're gonna need to ask questions about to find that, have that found out over the summer.
That falls on.
So can you,
disparity.
I'm gonna, wait, let me finish my whole sentence. So Rebecca, can you make sure you work with Teddy to get those questions in?
I'm gonna ask Julie also. That's good.
So the working group will absolutely work with staff to make sure that we're asking all the questions. Is there anyone? So some folks from transportation, maybe someone from education. Trying to get a nice mix of rural districts and urban districts. High spending, low spending districts. Mixed parties.
It's operating versus tuition.
Is everyone okay leaving, having Teddy and Woody take the next steps and everyone can talk to the two of them about it?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thanks, Sharon.
He signed when he wasn't here.
I did it yesterday when he wasn't here.
What I say I want to do.
Okay.
Well done.
That's one.
Well, construction, I think the next step is to put together a list of witnesses who can share a little bit more about pool models that seem to be working somewhere else that might be part of a solution. Bridget, can you help figure out who those witnesses are? We talked a little bit about Prince George County. I think Connor has a bunch of leads if you want to talk to him. Thank you. Yes.
Exactly how people are helped today in the formula so that we all know exactly what today is.
I have no idea what you mean by that.
I mean,
How
people who are in the middle of construction right now,
Ah,
how is the current?
yes, that can be part of the testimony. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
And I think one of the, I had so many questions about this one too, so I'll pass it on to Bridget. It does.
I want, when I'm saying what I said I would like to see, I mean specifically, so I understand. An example here, an example there, not just a bunch of words where then don't have a blood to the.
We could use Burlington as an example.
Or Colchester.
Colchester, Burlington,
Right.
Do we just talk about what's happening in current law?
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great.
No, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Colchester.
Colchester. And Winooski and.
Winooski is a
They're
like
different
significant
because
outlier in how they
they're
funded their school
Let's
district.
talk about Colchester here.
Okay, great. I think that's gonna be of all the nuts, that will be the hardest nut. Thank you for
Pretty much.
working on that nut. Yes. And Charlie and Bridget are working on this.
I have a question about this. When you do this, unfortunately, the problem is people choose the construction financing model that fits their funding formula. So if you're gonna bring Maryland or Prince George's County or Rhode Island, I think you also need to bring the underlying funding
Of
formula.
course, yes.
that has been part of the discussion.
That is one of the hardest things about all of this.
It's been part of the
Parties and
discussion because, as you know, I've been working with a committee on language about how we want to instruct in more detail the consultant that's going to work on the foundation formula. And it's kind of this process where these things need to move forward together. You can't really figure out how we're going to fund school construction unless you have the consultant also thinking about what our possible model for school construction is, because the funding formula is going to have to work with that. We can't have two conflicting ways. Because the language we originally had, I was concerned because it said, you know, all of the grants to help with debt service were going to be subject to appropriation. But how do you have schools be subject to appropriation and not know if they're getting money from the state, but then be on the hook and then have a foundation formula that doesn't allow you to raise extra money to service the debt. So
I've got it. And one more request about this, and then if you could also talk about a transition plan. I mean, I'm thinking it just in my immediate area. There's one district that is doing private fundraising, one of the schools doing private fundraising for $5 million. And there was a school district that to get their bonding because they were afraid we were going to do what we're now doing. And there was another 2 districts that have put off weatherization, energy efficiency transitions because they're afraid of what we're doing. So we're going to have such a range.
If you could talk to Bridget about that to make sure that.
It's a small project.
It's
Before we go to Taryn,
It's huge.
everything, so all of the different components that we're thinking of for next steps are all going to need to be shaped around the work that Education Committee is doing right now. And the 2 parts that we have not talked about yet in terms of next steps on our list here are sort of how do we fund CISAs and merger incentives in an ongoing way? And what do we need in terms of changing foundation formula contingencies and clarification language? And so I think those are both 2 great things to actually hold until after Erin explains what the Education Committee is doing. Erin, hi, the floor is yours. We've had a quite wandering conversation today, much whiteboarding, as I'm sure you all have been whiteboarding, so.
And sorry, do we have any documents like?
No, Erin's just here to give us an informal update.
No, if you want to look at it on our committee page, we just got draft 4.1 from Ledge Council that we are looking at. Still many decision points, but Ledge Council is doing a fabulous job of keeping us organized with a list of decision points.
Right, thank you.
And in fact, you might find useful the document posted yesterday, which was our giant list of decision points. So if you really want to get in the weeds, it's really fun. Yeah. Okay. So the draft we are working on really has 2 major components, again, with lots of outstanding decisions. The first would be to create mandatory collaborative education service agencies. So the testimony and the work we've heard a lot of from the field, from the redistricting task force. We created BOCES law here a couple of years ago for this very reason, because we know we need to be doing more regional collaborative sharing. So the CISAs will be mandatory. We are still working out the boundaries. We are probably at like 7, but not a hard and fast number of how many there will be. But working largely with like VSBA, the superintendents and the school boards association around where the kind of natural regions are of some partnership already. Quite frankly, COVID created some of that. They started to have to collaborate or just during that time. So we'll be creating the CISAs. Much of it will follow existing law that we have from our BOCES law, except that they will be mandatory. It will not be voluntary. And we will call out specifically that they are to be working in, there's a whole host of like areas we know that likely this is going to be useful for both efficiency and for improving delivery. But top of that is special education. As we all know, we're working on how specific or not to be around special education. knowing that the extraordinary cost and some of the high needs work, the out of placement districts that are costing our system a lot right now and are not necessarily keeping kids close to communities or delivering the best education is a likely area of really good work that CSAS can do and is already happening in Vermont. So there is some, as the chair always says, proof of concept here. This isn't just theoretical. They're doing it in one region of the state, which has been wonderful. And we've had a lot of testimony from them that is helping to guide this. The other thing that the CSAS will have some connection to is the ongoing work towards consolidation of districts. And so the second piece of our bill will be setting up a process for mandatory merger discussions, not mandatory mergers, but mandatory merger discussions, a voluntary process towards fewer districts and towards more hopefully regional behavior. So we were actually just talking about the timeline as I left and trying to figure out how quickly we can get that up and running and what the timeline would be then for the fields to be making some decisions or not. So one challenge we are having is that CSAs can be stood up much faster than new districts, which is one of their benefits. However, it will still take some time. And we want to get facilitators who have experience in the Vermont education landscape working in the regions around where there might be some consolidation as quickly as possible. And that might be faster than we can even stand up CSAs. And so we are trying to figure out who the fiscal agent is that would actually be holding the contract for these facilitators. Because if we have to wait till CSAs are formed, that slows it down a little bit. If we have to go through state like AOE, that puts us on state contracting, RFP timelines that are going to also slow things down. So we are exploring some creative ways to deal with that challenge so that study committees can be formed quite quickly. Again, we're working right now on the timeline. So I unfortunately don't have specifics to give you about the timeline. But the process would be we resource these facilitators. The facilitators are, here's where it gets tricky, and I don't know how the chair is going to report this on the floor without visuals, but this is only a draft form, but the facilitators are not just sort of go out and find people that might want to get together and merge. The facilitators are working from a guidance map of some sort that we are still working on. We are using a map somebody at the top of our table created a while ago as like the starting map. Nope, not his map that started. No, it's a guidance map now. But we're having really good conversations in committee because we have people from these regions that are like, this is like close to happening here. And if we could put these with these, so none of this is going to require the mergers, but we're trying to create kind of an outline of where the study committee discussions could start. And on the field and out in the field, they can shift those. The facilitator, the field can say, this doesn't make sense, or we should go here, or we really don't want to be involved. It is still voluntary. We're working on kind of if no changes happen, then what consequence part of it. And that might be some joint decision-making between our committees. But essentially the bill will come out with a guidance map of the potential merger of the potential study committee groupings and what those could be to try to kind of expedite the process instead of it just being totally wide open. So the connection here that's a little bit challenging, I think makes sense with enough description, but is the sort of CSA and the facilitators. And the facilitators are going to operate, we're envisioning, within the CSA regions. And so if there are 7 CSAs, if that's where we end up, there would be 7 facilitators out working in their region on those potential study committees. Again, not sure they're going to be employed by the CISA because of some fiscal agent questions. So it's, that part I think is confusing, probably. We're starting to get it a little bit more clear in our committee, so I'm happy to answer questions. And unfortunately, I don't have a timeline answer for you, but that is like next on our list. And we're going largely, I will say, on really good cooperation and help from folks in the field, current and former superintendents who've been through merger processes, voluntary and involuntary, of how long things actually took, and using a lot of that to try to create a ambitious but realistic timeline.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify,
Yeah.
so you talk about like mandatory merger discussions, but, I don't want to like say what you said. I thought I heard that there might be like an opt-out, like if there's some district or something who just doesn't want to take part in these conversations. Is that a
Yes.
correct way of framing it? That they're supposed to, but they could opt out. Is that a correct understanding of what you're discussing?
We're relying a lot of this on like chapter 11 and processes that exist from Act 46. So yes, it is ultimately voluntary. It's a good, I have to think through that one a little bit more. There is, I will say, different from Act 46, like as the study committee process goes along. So the big order of operations is study committee, so more local, regional decision-making on the ground. Their report goes to a drive-by of the secretary, but then really the state board. And then if it's to form a new district, then it goes to the voters to make that district decision. So that's the sort of law, like big, there's a lot of timeline pieces we need to put under that. What we intend that will be different from Act 46 is that study committee reports, and so public information that will come back to us and many others, will be both of the sort of favorable and unfavorable. So if a study committee works and decides not to merge, instead of it just going away, the study committee will go away, but they will still have to issue a report of why they did it, which is different than what happened in Act 46, best I can tell, sort of.
I did that too.
Okay, well, I thought that was what Ledge Council had, that like this was new language that we did not have, at least in
It's section 9.
statute, and so I'll have to check that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How, in conversations about, have you all started having any conversations about how the CISOs are funded, or how, like, which, in the testimony you've taken, has there been conversation about like what incentives worked well under Act 46 and what didn't?
So, okay, so which one do you want me to go first? Sort of, okay, so
Totally
CISAs,
different questions though, sorry.
right, so CISAs, we already have, on the books, $10,000 startup grants for BOCES, which we're gonna rename CISAs, so that exists, that's really for the sort of legal work and creating the articles of agreement. So the startup costs more than that. We are still trying to get better information about how much that would be. Though there should be a little bit of a jump start here because we have one model. And so some of that might be able to now be replicated and maybe not require as much kind of legal articles of agreement sort of work in creating them. So the startup money that is on our ongoing list of how much it would take to really get CISAs up and running. But then once they are, I think we're likely looking at a kind of fee for service model. So there's sort of, self-funding in a way that districts might pay a small membership fee, and then you pay for the services that you are using or not using. And that helps, drive the budget, but there will be some startup costs. On the second one, remind me what the second one was.
I'm gonna ask-
Facilitators? Yeah,
Before we get to this.
yeah.
The first one.
Yeah.
So I know that under Act 46 or actually under current CISAs, right, the cost savings from having more efficient service delivery gets rolled back into budgets to be spent on other needs.
Where's clear?
How, have you all just talked about that at all yet? Okay. Cool, that's great. I'm just more wondering, like, trying to find our lane. And that seems like that's a good place for Arlene. Okay. And then my second question was, have you heard testimony on what worked and what didn't for incentives for F-46?
Yeah, and it's a loud screaming, the tax incentives, the tax incentives, the tax
Well.
incentive is what worked. So, from our testimony, that is, that's what we.
That worked the places that it worked and didn't work the places it didn't work.
Right, that is what we keep hearing. So, the other discussion obviously is around, same when you're at school, is construction aid and, and work towards construction and consolidation of buildings where it makes sense and could be done, but it's going to require a little capital to get there. And particularly middle and high schools, but maybe not even just middle and high schools. There's some great work happening in Orleans around regional elementary, but that is so I think we're very interested in a committee as House Ed committee as incentives, particularly around consolidation of buildings. How do we do that exactly? I mean, we have some of the framework because we have, right, exactly. And that's what you're talking about. So yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
That'd be a wonderful incentive.
Okay. And did you talk about distance, like penalties at all? Did anyone talk about penalties?
We keep sort of dancing around it,
Cool.
trying to figure out, what is,
Representative Odie.
Thank you. So when you say especially high schools, maybe middle schools, maybe some elementary schools, is that based on
What's that based on?
educational? Yeah. What's that based on? Open-ended question. More detail.
that is based on, some testimony, I'm just going off the top of my head now, I know, so like some testimony we've had, even from Bruce Baker, of like, where you start to see efficiencies in terms of, or savings in terms of numbers of kids in a building, and also educational benefits before you start to hit kind of the wall where it can go either way. And because we know from education research, from child development research, particularly at the middle and high school level, having more students, having a more diverse student body allows you to offer, I mean, there's no secret, look around at our schools. The larger schools are generally able to offer far more opportunities. You can field more teams, you can have more clubs, you can mix kids up different ways. Of course, it's more complicated than that, but that gives you those opportunities that as we are smaller, those are harder to do. And those opportunities generally matter more and are more appropriate at the middle and particularly at the high school level. Education's a little bit more universal at an elementary level in terms of the skills. As you get older, kids are getting more specialized, their interests are
Well,
so
That's
it.
the only thing I want to say. I think that it can really benefit kids not to be the same cohort
Yeah,
of children for 6 years, 8 years. In other words, the same 10 kids where you're always the troublemaker or always whatever. And also, they do have a lot of different needs that somebody really whiz at math can that really be, I'm not sure that's met anywhere, but and did you also look at costs per student when you gave those three in order? What are the
no,
highest? I don't know the answer. Is it the most expensive to run a tiny elementary school, or is it the most expensive to run a tiny high school?
I think that's a very challenging question that it depends a lot on multiple factors. I mean, yes, things cost more when they're smaller, but it, depends on geography, it depends on the teacher salaries there, it depends on, the weights the students care. Like, I think that's a harder question to just give a clear answer on, but I'm way out of my lane now.
Did you take testimony from Bruce Baker last year, this year?
We did get a little bit this year.
Oh, really? Okay. Cool.
It was,
Okay.
I mean, his testimony, I think, aligned with like some of what people are hearing about, school construction and all of our hopes and dreams, but it's insanely expensive right now. And so, like the places where it's the most obviously needed and overdue, start there. And he was quite frankly talking about being a student in Rutland, decades ago, and saying, like, in Rutland County, like, wow, how is some of the, same system still there? And, some of the same things the task force called out of like certain regional places where, and that, again, the incentives might come in, but places where it is, none of it's easy, but going to be easiest or is maybe most kind of long overdue for some reconfiguration and wow, start there now.
I think Patty was actually sitting in that chair at almost the same time of day yesterday, saying exactly that about Rutland.
Progress.
Which begs the question of why they haven't moved to consolidate, because you could actually move them from 5 to 2 high schools within their
Yeah.
current footprint with this current number of students that they have, just saying. But can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things that was so interesting about Act 46 is that the places where mergers happened were areas that shared the same structure.
Yeah.
And so, Taconic and Green, they all tuitioned at the same grade level, so they snap right up. Addison County, snap right up. Where it didn't happen was places like North Country, where they just didn't want to do it, and places like, most of the rest of the state, where it was a mix of operating and tuitioning. How is this different?
I think we are hitting the same walls that the state has hit for decades, right? Like the same, and our committee is stuck in the same challenges of varying regional interests and being really hung up on the different grading systems. I mean, to be frank, like it's multiple times a day that our committee hits that roadblock. And I think in some senses, our options here are sort of do nothing because of that roadblock, or continue to try yet again to do some things more voluntarily, more regionally, and continue to wrestle with that very real challenge. I mean, yes.
Yeah. So when you close all your schools,
Yep.
what some of our districts have, you actually don't make any decisions anymore. All you do is sign the checks.
Yep.
And given that, did you consider assigning the LEAs for those non-operating districts, assigning that to the CSAs? Why not make it efficient by
Right.
just moving the LEA responsibilities to the CSA?
We have not gone down that policy path.
And
That policy path, yeah. I mean, this is a largely, voluntary, sort of regionally community-driven process. And that we are trying to lay out here at the same time that, I think that's the other value and hope of CSAs, and will take a little bit longer, of course, to come to fruition. But if we start getting more resource sharing, more collaboration, that is a necessary stepping stone to more mergers and consolidation. And so, that doesn't put us on any timeline of saying this will happen by this date, but it certainly seems that it puts us closer on a path if districts or schools who have not before been sharing are starting to share some resources. I think a lot of the Act 46 mergers, if they already had, a special ed sharing across, that was my district's, scenario, it made it much easier to merge because they were already doing some shared services. And so, this is a more ground up approach, a more maybe education approach of saying, if we can start to share more services, will that help us also start to consolidate and merge? But I know it doesn't fully answer your question satisfactorily, which I totally understand.
I see. So 3 other people have questions. I also have a question, and we only got Erin for 30 minutes because she has to go back downstairs. So my question is, have you all had any conversations about some of the class and cultural divisions and what to do about those? I'm sorry if I stole your question, Teddy.
I guess no, except that I think that there's some really thoughtful discussions happening around our table about this and about a guidance map. Again, these are not forced mergers. This is not, a new map of districts, but if this is the guidance to facilitators and study committees, there's some really careful thinking around our table about that very piece and being careful that we aren't putting out guidance or creating a sort of first step here that is about keeping very, class divisions in one group and then another class division in another, that we are trying to create a little bit more
Heterogeneity.
diversity and
That's the
not.
promise of public education, right? Promise, not, right?
Yeah.
Educational.
Yeah.
Um, okay, thank you.
I think that is where this and help. We're looking for help. We're literally gonna have to put in, these are the towns or these are the districts, these are the systems that would be in this guidance map thing. So where you see things that we can change, and I will say, Rep McCann has a really good understanding of this area that's been really helpful. And she also grew up in the Northeast Kingdom and has actually a really good understanding. Rep Harple's got a really good sense of, Rep Quimby's got a really good sense of, that's really helpful for us to see about. And some of these I think are definitely going to shift. That feedback is super helpful right now. And the chair would say, please just be specific. Tell us what you think, what should go where.
Representative Maslin, then Wazak, then Odie, then we're gonna wrap.
Thank you. This has been very informative, even though it's probably because you're touching a lot of different subjects.
Yeah.
And I have a question which may be better directed to you in your chair, but I'll put it out there. Given the traditional roadblocks, I guess you could say, traditional or outstanding roadblocks. I'd be curious to know, and maybe it'll be in a cafeteria discussion or something like that. If you have a process in committee that you work through to try to work through those roadblocks. And that's the way I work, and it's not the way other people work. And I'm just curious to know, how do you propose to get from here to there? I'd just be curious to know as appropriate.
I'll give the chair a whole lot of credit for having just an extraordinary amount of patience, and I think willingness to just listen again and again and again to different interests at the table, and accept where there are points we're not going to get to enough people around the table to be able to overcome a roadblock. And so that is part of why we're on the path that we are on, of what is possible, given that the people in House Education represent all of the diverse interests on education that exist in this body, that exists in the state of Vermont. And so if we're sort of a microcosm of that, and this is the most common, and not everybody's probably going to vote for it, path we can get to, then given, the circumstances and democratic process, that's where we
And to reiterate without
landed.
taking more time.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand how you and your chair and your committee are gonna work through these things, even if you don't know yet. And it's just trying to understand what I just said. Thank you. And that's sufficient for right now. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Representative Wazak.
I think I'm good. I think you.
Okay.
I think you got it. What I just, so this is not a question, but
Yeah.
the voluntary thing makes me very nervous. Because it's a glib way of saying it, but one grumpy school board throws off the whole thing, and then we're not gonna realize those same things. Act 46 didn't work for, God, Barry, we have 2 municipalities of Barry because we can't agree on so much, right? So, and I know I've been talking to Rep McCann about this a lot.
Yep.
Rep McCann speaks for me, so please listen to her.
She's doing a super helpful. Yes.
Representative Odie.
Well, I'm just wondering, since it isn't new district lines with forced mergers, which is what is envisioned in 73, how will this trigger or not trigger going forward with the rest of it, which is the foundation?
It's like an test.
That's for us to figure out.
You mean ledge council?
No, I mean us in this room to figure out, so if it's this is so hypothetical and not a policy proposal.
I'll put in my pen now.
Thank you. Oh, I love that. That is thank you. That really worked for me, Carol. If, say, we have a voluntary merger process, is it that at some point, 75% of the districts in the state are merging? That means that mergers are that we have new districts. Is it that 75% of the students in the state have joined districts that are 2,000 or 4,000 or more? And that means that we have new districts? Is it that 79.3% of all voters in the state are or all taxpayers in the state? But I imagine like if we say like to call the process complete, we're going to need to name a very clear metric other than just the drawing of lines. And I think that's going to be something we're going to need to figure out.
Interest.
Yes.
I'll think about that.
So Ledge Council will say you need to actually define your terms and that's us to define.
What else would be helpful for us to know about where you are in the process or decisions? Again, the timeline is top of mind for us and the amounts of money are also trying to get ballpark ideas on these is also top of mind.
We have been working through sort of all of these pieces that we are imagining we're doing in parallel. And after we get the bill from you, some of them are much more finished than others. Some of them are basically finished. There's some pieces that we would like you to look at some point and some pieces that you totally don't need to. So the reserve guidance language, we like basically finished a month ago, but I don't think we've ever shared with you. We have some language that was recommended from this Special Education Association that we would want to look at with you all about maintenance of effort. It came after that joint hearing we had, but we haven't sort of checked back with you or with them about it. And so this whiteboard thing, I'm like actually writing up in a tidier way and I'll share with everyone.
I know you gotta go. One last question. So the
I don't
people
know,
that,
because we're just gonna keep having the same discussion. We've had every day since what, January 6th?
good job out there. Just thinking about the folks that you are dropping in as consultants into areas where you think there might be merger possibilities. Are they reporting to AOE? What is the organization to whom they would be reporting? Who decides where they go?
Decides where they go. I think.
Who decides where the consultants go to try to encourage mergers, according to what you said,
Like,
which is Matt?
well, I think it's, yeah, so, okay, so let's say we end up with, like, this is Hamlin map before it's been changed to a guidance map, which it will be, with potential seesaws laid over it in this like the dark kind of railroad line. Those are the seesaw recommendations that come from the redistricting task force. They're the superintendent Reedmans, and we think we're going to shift a little bit. But so you would then have one consultant or one facilitator dropped into each CISA region, and using this underlying guidance map of, oh, if I'm in this region, I might be trying to pull together 3 study committees of potential new districts. Or if I'm in this region, I might be trying to pull together 4 study committees of potential new districts.
So it's
But I'm,
the committee's deciding where they go based on the drawing of the CISA maps?
What do you mean by where they go?
I don't know about, yeah.
So you draw the CISA maps.
Yep.
You understand there are some merger possibilities
Yep.
within those.
Yep.
So first you're deciding on the map on the CISAs.
Yes.
And second, then, is it just one consultant per CISA that you're saying go forth and prosper, or what do you?
Essentially, yes, but there also, I think we already have some provisions that it might be, because trying to match all of these things up, there might be places where like, oh, they're gonna be in this CISA for now, but the merger, this district is gonna go with this other merger study committee. Like there's ability to move over the line a little bit in terms of which study committee.
And every CISA, so you're gonna have a CISA map, and then every CISA will have sort of a sub map within it of recommended district configurations.
Guidance configuration.
Okay.
Right.
But before the CISA is legally formed,
Yes,
who is that consultant reporting to?
that is what we're working on right now, because they're, if we want them to start work before the CISAs probably are all going to be in place. And so I'm not sure they're really reporting to anyone. They're facilitating these study committees, which is a process, that many went through and laid out in Act 46. That's a community-based, like local schools process. So I guess they're reporting to them. I mean, they're really just facilitating and organizing.
You're trying to figure out where the contracts.
Study groups, where the contract goes, we are trying to figure out, and that is the challenge.
So
That's rough.
you very delightfully corrected the careful words that I had, you corrected my not careful words with your careful words about this recommended map. I am wondering if there's a way to not call, I know they were called study committees under Act 46. I wonder if there's any way to not call them that, because and to be maybe more specific in what they are. But
We haven't talked about that.
please do. Thank you.
Suggestions?
Just something with more oomph. Teddy looks very excited and he's gonna come up with something for you.
No.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands, so thank you very much, Erin. Right. As Erin leaves, and good luck to you on your journey. As Erin's walking out of the room, I'm gonna do a little public service announcementing.
Thank you very much.
So at 11:30, we are going to stop for the morning because the Vermont Superintendent's Association is having their regular lunch, the Capitol Plaza. This is a very good time for us to go talk to superintendents. There's often also school board chairs and business managers there, and it's a really great opportunity for us to be checking in with all the things we're thinking about with them. So would love for people to go. I'm gonna go. I think Charlie's gonna go. I don't know who else is gonna go. So wanted to leave the committee time to do that. Bill, are you going?
No.
You don't know yet, sorry. And then at 1:00, we're back here to hear an amendment to the yield bill. So we will once again miss announcements, everyone. So sorry about that. Okay. Any other housekeeping confusion? Anything? We didn't take a break today. I'm sorry. That was terrible of me. Does anyone need like a 2-minute break or should we just push through to 11:30? We only have 20 minutes left. We're not hungry. Okay. On our list, the things we have not talked about yet. Now that we understand the outline of the CISA support brokered relationship plan, I'm thinking about what kind of testimony we want to take in order to better understand what merger incentives would be helpful. And so if folks have ideas on testimony for that, please think about that and let me know like by tomorrow at noon.
Can you repeat the exact?
Yes. So what I just heard from Erin, I think we just heard from Erin, is that they're depending on this committee to be thinking about what incentives would be needed for the brokered relationships of new districts that will be facilitated by and with the CISAs or under the CISAs or with these facilitators. So, and I want to remind people that incentives can be positive incentives, they can be negative incentives, they can be neutral incentive. It's not just talking about like pouring money at the problem. There are a lot of different directions we can go. And those incentives need to be about forming. It also might need to be about transcending some class divides between two towns. Lots of different pieces of that. So I'd like people to just, for next steps, let me know by noon tomorrow what testimony you think might be useful to figure that question out a little bit more. Yes.
I envisioned a couple of years ago was, we have to know what the educational policy is, what the education committee here wants to accomplish for us to do this kind of that tax policy. So what are they envisioning? I heard them talk about effectiveness, efficiency. But do they have, that I've seen in writing, class size, minimums and things like that? Are we going toward what's already in writing in 73? Are we doing
we want to make sure that the work we're doing is fiscally supporting the goals that the education committee is moving forward, both in Act 73 and updates to Act 73 that are in the language they have in committee right now.
Okay, and language and committee.
Find the money.
Representative Wozniak.
I appreciate you naming that there are both positive and negative financial incentives, and I think it's important as we move through these conversations to remember that just human behavior and human emotion does not always track to financial incentives.
You're not rational creatures.
No, we are not rational. And so I think that just like per, Act 46, a lot of emotions got in the way of the implementation of that. So as we're talking about what those incentives should or should not look like, I want us to keep in mind that that we're not rational creatures.
I really appreciate that. And I think sort of one piece of that that's both about like addressing the fact that we're not rational creatures and it's actually a financial thing is say if a community thought that if they merged, a school might close, right? And that feels like a loss. And if we were able to create the right fiscal environment, then the work that that community might be doing might be about that new use for the building actually being a huge win for that community, right? Yes, Representative Odie has been talking about this. And so like, that's a place that the feelings and the story about the process can really line up with fiscal issues. So send me testimony ideas about how we can get from where we are to that.
I worry, I worry that we're repeating the past, because I think people move when they see that doing a ton of hard work is gonna leave them better off. And unless, I wish we could decide what it is that we actually think is going to make better opportunities at a lower or reasonable price point. And I think it's the high schools. And if that is it, then that's what the study committee should be organized around. And the implication could be that you need to be part of planning this regional high school or you're going to be added to it after the fact. I think there's people right now, we so reward people for not doing that financially. Why wouldn't they do it?
So if you could send me an email about the particular witnesses you would want to have in to get the testimony about like the mistakes of the past that we don't want to repeat. Representative Meslin.
More general comment than what you're specifically asking for, but when we were debating Act 46, Ways and Means downstairs, one of the things.
Gosh, I'm so glad I wasn't here then.
One of the things that I brought up frequently and always lost is what's the role of the school board going to be going forward? Because school boards play a very important part of this discussion all the way around. And I couldn't get people to agree that we should try to work with the definition of what a school board is going to become. And I have continually had the same concern. And I'm just putting that out there. I mean, there are bits and pieces of what Aaron brought in, which are very related to that discussion and So anyway, so that's just something I'm putting out there so that you can understand what my concerns were and are still.
And the governance side of it is, I think, where a lot of the work of the education committee is and has been.
Understood. And school board can have several different definitions as we work our way through the potential definition.
So if there's any testimony you want for that, let me know.
Well, it's.
So the fiscal decision.
I would like to hear it.
Okay, I don't want to do all the thinking for you. I want you to do the thinking and tell me who you want to have in.
I'm thinking out loud.
Great.
Good, bad, or ugly.
Thank you. There was another hand, but I lost who it was, but maybe there wasn't. Great. Last one, I think. Next steps for foundation formula contingencies and clarifications. I think there's some language that's been drafted that needs to be shared with the committee. I think we can get an update from staff on what the current law contingencies are. And the report that's coming, just so we can all remember that. What are other next steps or witnesses we would need on the foundation formula contingencies and clarifications? We would need to figure out, I guess one of those contingencies is that when would this go into effect and why?
We're on foundation formula updates right now,
Mhm.
and you wanna know,
What our next steps are.
The real question is, if we have CSIS, not school districts, does the foundation formula work? So
Mhm.
it'd be good to have testimony on that.
And in that case, which foundation, cost factor, evidence-based, et cetera, et cetera.
and you also have testimony, and could the current formula continue to work?
Oh, okay.
Because what we're really talking about, we're back to local control now. So if we're on local control, then the current formula could work if we bake into it new, you calling them incentives and this, and that, but new ways to count, for example, what your per pupil spending is, depending on whether you're advancing toward where we're trying to get.
What I will say that I heard from Erin, and we will, and maybe that will change between now and when they send us a bill, is that while they are extending the timeline, they're still envisioning an endpoint where we have much larger districts. It's just the process to get there is locally decided. And so there's, what do we do with the current law financing system in the meantime? And then there's, what does it look like to transition?
Because that, what we do currently will help people make decisions. If they decide, no, we're not going to do anything about consolidating, we're not gonna, I don't even want to say consolidate, we're not even gonna meet with the little committees, whatever we call them. But if so maybe this is the thing is, if, you can choose not to collaborate, you can choose not to talk, but that will impact you in the current funding form.
And so I think that's a CISA support merger incentive topic, but yes,
That's true.
I'm just trying to keep, I know all the ideas.
I
are all
know,
mixed
I know
together.
that's where that belongs, but if you're going to get to a foundation formula, which, I don't know, but if that's where we're headed, you really have got to, I would think we have to take some steps along the way, otherwise.
I feel that we really need a look back or some other mechanism at the end of the process with the consultants. There's a final sign off on that foundation formula. It really, and I don't know, if you're asking for witnesses to testify. I don't know how to. Yeah, I can't envision the person who would come and, testify on that. But I just feel like there are so many moving pieces with that foundation formula that we really need someone who has designed it and thought through all the different analyses that we've asked for and can say to us, this is what the impact of this foundation formula will be. Because it's really hard to explain to a community the costs and benefits if you really don't know.
And so I'm gonna put that topic, very warranted, into what is the essentially, like, what is the trigger for the foundation formula, and that would go in there.
I got a thought for.
I think Representative Watson is next.
I just, I'll try to find some folks that are left from Act 46 in my school district. The current just to Representative Odie's point about the current funding formula is strangling my schools right now, and it's completely strangling my schools. It's completely failing us. It's failing my taxpayers, it's failing my students, it's failing my teachers. And I also am very, very nervous about any of this voluntary stuff because the voluntary mergers also failed in my community last time around. So I'm going to continue to go through this process. I'm going to, try to make this legislation as good as it can be under the parameters that are set for us for the Education Committee. But I still strongly believe that we should be looking at mandatory mergers and we need to be going towards the foundation formula.
Brannigan.
Comment.
Yeah.
The reason all of this works for the district that I represent is that half of the district continually votes no on their school budget every single year. It's not working for them, like Teddy just expressed. I'm in that same boat, for at least half my district. I've always felt the sooner we get going with that foundation formula, the better. No more fighting about the budget. The board can anticipate what money they're getting, and we can go forward from there. I got a little glimpse of that map that she was, and I have seen it before. It seems to include my district with a whole lot of other districts. It's the islands who also have school choice. Some of the schools in the island have total school choice. All of them have grade 6 or grade 8 through 12 school choice. So they've grouped them together, which I also think is a good idea. So there are 2 steps forward that could be made for my district that I think would help right off the bat next year.
Thank you. And if you have members of folks from your community, whether it's your superintendent or school board chair, who you think would be helpful for us to hear from about sort of what a contingency that they would like to see for us moving towards that, that would be great.
Is it possible any of this might be implemented next year?
No.
The fall.
I mean, I have no idea what's gonna happen over the next 3 months, but next year feels like a very, very, very fast. We won't even have a report back from about what the foundation formula needs to be yet. Yeah.
Are we having her back in?
Erin? Probably, yeah.
Talking about
Flo, tall expert from UVM.
Tammy
Colby.
Colby.
Oh, no, she is not the contractor on the study, and we can have her in if we want to hear about the existing foundation formula.
Oh.
But she is not the contractor for the current JFO work, but,
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
one second, I'm gonna see if anyone else who has not said very much today is interested in speaking before Representative Odie does. Because this is gonna be the last word before we wrap. Okay, Representative.
I was thinking about the look back and where to look for that. We had to look back for the clean heat standard, so whoever put that together.
Yeah, that works really well, Representative Odie.
Well, it's a look back. I'm not. telling you.
Oh, look, that's probably the wrong term for it. It is
I'm
basically,
sorry for my
we
sarcasm.
need affirmative action to be required from the legislature to put that foundation formula in place. There's still too many unknowns about what it will look like in the end. And Teddy, to your point, there's no way that you know that the foundation formula is going to help your district because we don't know what it's going to look like after this process. We don't know. I understand that the current formula is not working for your district. I get that. But until we know what the foundation formula is that we're actually proposing, you can't know that it's going to be better for you.
You're definitely gonna get a higher tax rate.
Can't
That's
get
for
worse.
sure.
Can't get worse.
That is not for sure. Thank you, everyone.
Can Julie provide testimony of what it would look like if we started raising the floor on Teddy's district so that the transition to the new foundation plan will be less of a shock?
There is an idea that's floated around a lot about setting the yield in a different place to create minimum spending, and we can hear some testimony on how that might work. Yes.
I would also,
Yes, go ahead, Representative Lefebvre.
very respectfully to all members of this committee and this body, I would like to be able to advocate for my district in the best way that I know how, without being told what is or is not good for my district. And that's been a frustration for me over the past few years.
Thank you.
I'm really sorry if you feel like I was trying to tell you what is good or not good for your district. I'm just saying it's an unknown. And so that's what I think it's an unknown for all of us. And I just want to make sure that we're making decisions based on data and we're making them with our eyes wide open. That's what I'm asking for.
I agree.
Thank you. On that, we are gonna wrap for the morning. We are back here at 1 o'clock to hear an amendment from Representative Logan. That's in the calendar.